Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited to have this honor to have a fireside chat without a fire, or a camera side chat with Brian. He's a man who needs no introduction because we'd really like to dive into the questions. But just briefly, many of us in here might know him as the founder of Keyhole, what became Google Earth, something that I've used all my life, I guess I could say, as a student, as an academic. He's an engineering leader, and today he's the CTO of Niantic Spatial, building 3D machine-readable maps that will power augmented future, which is, some of it is here, the driverless cars that we see on the streets. And to see what the future looks like and what he's building, we'd like to kick off with this short video that will give you a basic understanding of what they're building.
Niantic Spatial connects AI with the real world, bringing intelligence to the places we live, work, and explore. We do this by building a large geospatial model that people and machines can talk to. It starts with a traditional digital map with tens of millions of landmarks and local businesses. A 3D base map adds dimension, enhanced with high-resolution scans of the real world, from aerial platforms like drones to ground-level sensors like phones, robots, and AI glasses. Those fragments are processed, aligned, and georeferenced, then used to train a series of powerful models. In a sense, this is a map built for computers, not for humans, to help machines understand and interact with the physical world. Once complete, these models provide three key services. Reconstruction transforms raw scans into detailed 3D visualizations, powering inspection, simulation, and collaboration. Localization enables precise navigation, contextual insights about the world, and AR experiences. And with semantic understanding at every 3D point, our map can answer open-ended questions about the world, giving people and machines the context they need to navigate, interpret, and understand large spaces. Together, these services bring intelligence to the real world, powering AI, wearables, and robotics, and helping machines truly understand the world around them.
I think that's a great overview. Most of us are comfortable with Google Maps. Yeah, we're happy with how they work. So I think we're all curious, why do we need another map? And Brian is also a UN champion for the Earth. So why is this shift important in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I mean, we've been working on, and I've been working on 3D graphics and 3D reconstruction for 35 years or so. And with Google, our goal was to collect as much data to organize, where we started with satellite imagery. So Keyhole was really, its innovation was there's a satellite imagery, it's hard to use, can we make it easier to use? And we created this app. Google liked it. We put map data on top of it, combined it with Google Maps, and then added Street View. And Street View, were these 360 photos. And the next thing we learned right after we published the Street View photos were that the map data that we were showing was terrible, because it's very hard. And Navtech and TeleAtlas had done the best that they could, but it wasn't good enough. And every time we published a picture, people said it's contradicting what the map data says. So we decided to make our own maps using Street View data as one of the core sets. And so we made a new map of the world, 50 countries in about 5 years, and we're able to get much more precise geocodes with that Street View data. That was sort of what I would consider the ultimate problem with turn-by-turn navigation is the location and getting the road data correct. And that's why Google Maps is considered pretty accurate today, and why you shouldn't use Apple Maps.
Thanks for saying that.
But the problem now is that we need much more accurate maps, and we've already had one iteration of this with self-driving cars. So you've seen the Waymo videos, and many of you know how it's done. You run LiDAR at high resolution, you collect the imagery, and self-driving cars need very accurate data because they need to localize themselves without GPS because A, it's not accurate enough, and B, it doesn't work in tunnels. And so they create these LiDAR localization maps, and they have to keep them up to date. So one of the challenges for Waymo and for all self-driving is to have that kind of map data in a city is hard. And so they have to go into a city, drive it, and regularly redrive it. And that's what they do. And so Phoenix and San Francisco, maybe Austin, and eventually London and DC, Waymo's expanding its network and is using this high resolution data. Now, the problem is that robots on sidewalks don't have that. We have not collected that kind of data, and robots on sidewalks do not know where they are. And so can we help them find themselves, and can we help maintain a higher resolution, higher fidelity, more dynamic map? Because when somebody puts the trash out, on Monday afternoon, Monday mornings, that's a material impact to where the robot, delivery vehicle can drive. The other consumer for this, which was shown in the video, are these glasses that we've been hearing about coming for years and years and years. And augmented reality glasses are hard. If you hadn't noticed, we are getting better VR there. Meta has spent a huge amount of money on that. Snapchat is actually, pretty close with some real augmented reality glasses. But the last year or so, year and a half, Meta's Ray-Bans suddenly became something different. They have no display at all. They don't augment anything in front of you, but they do know what the world looks like. But their biggest problem is they don't know where they're looking. We can localize ourselves with GPS, we can localize ourselves, and the magnetic compass on my phone thinks I'm pointed here, but I'm really pointed there because it's terrible. And on the glasses, it's even worse. So a visual positioning system, which is what we've been working on, is critical for even these Ray-Ban glasses to work. And so, that was the thesis that started our work, at Niantic Labs. And very recently, we sold off the games in Pokemon Go. And now we are Niantic Spatial, focused entirely on this augmented reality problem.
So I was just thinking in my mind, why wouldn't the robot just depend on the camera? Like, why wouldn't you introduce, LiDAR, a robot with a lot of LiDAR in order to account for all these changes? Why wouldn't that work?
It's the cold start problem for mapping, which is that, you drop a human down on a friendly suburban street, they look around, they eventually figure out the intersection's there, and they have a mental model of where they are. They can eventually build something up, but they can't read the sign at the end of the street. They don't know really where they are, they just know they're on a street that has two intersections in the distance. And in an urban setting, it's even worse. The GPS just doesn't work. It puts you on top of the building, it'll put you a block away, very commonly, and it certainly doesn't tell you which way you're pointing. And so a robot that's dropped in the middle of an urban setting doesn't have the compute, and B, can't actually reconstruct anything beyond what it can see right now. And so, having a map of the world that you can't see is as important as having one that you can.
So how, in the video, we saw a lot of graphics. And as a person who started a label cafe, which is just working with my students, labeling all the time, I'm kind of curious how you started to build these types of models to collect this level of detail. For example, if you want to do it for the city of New York.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to collect and organize the data, and we started more with let's call it point sampling, and we actually had Pokemon Go players go take their cameras out and scan statues and Pokestop location areas and get the video from it, and that video is very, very useful for 3D reconstruction and localization of those very small spots. But that doesn't answer your question about sort of the world at large. So what you saw here was the drones. Okay, let's step back. So one of the things that all of you are probably familiar with is that textured triangulated meshes and LiDAR point clouds are kind of state of the art. It's what we've been using for years and years and years. Professionally, more LiDAR. And sort of visually and in the gaming world and in the simulation world, more textured triangles. One of the things that's happened in the last 2.5 years is Gaussian splats. And I think they're awesome. They're fun to say. And one of the engineers who worked for me, a very smart man, built Scaniverse and then added the Gaussian splats to Scaniverse. Now, how many of you have tried Scaniverse? Wow. I strongly recommend it. It's free. And it allows you to create 3D models. And yes, it could use the LiDAR on an iPhone, but it does not need the LiDAR on the iPhone to actually do a very good 3D model. And what it produces is Gaussian splats. And what's interesting about Gaussian splats is they are visually much more immersive and accurate than the usual textured mesh. And so we think that nearly wholesale there's going to be a redo of the visualization and simulation of our planet, where it used to be point clouds and meshes, and it's going to be Gaussian splats in the future. And some of those existing data sets that you've collected could be converted to Gaussian splats, so you're not all going to have to rescan the world that you already have the data for, but it's going to be much easier to collect and add data. And so we had these Pokemon Go players collecting hundreds of millions of scans. We have Scaniverse, which hopefully you can collect, and if you like what you have and want to share it on our map, that would be great, but it's not required. But we think that this rethink of visualization with Gaussian splats is very powerful. Now, there's one problem with it and one benefit. Now, Gaussian splats are not quite the same as meshes, so they don't do all the same things that meshes do. They look better. The flip side is, and this gets to many of the discussions we've seen back here, is that Gaussian splats actually are much more easily converted into semantic meaning than textured meshes are. And as it turns out, if we want to combine AI with geometry in the real world, then we really want to do segmentation, separating out things from other things, and we want to label them either manually if you have to, or algorithmically or automatically if you can. And so building segmentation and labeling of the real world is sort of the first step towards making this new 4D living map of the world.
Mm-hmm. And how do you keep it living? So you described in a city where if it's a robot, then suddenly there's a trash can that is not in its memory. So how do you keep that memory alive? How do you keep the robot keeping up with what's changing?
Yeah, there's sort of two answers to the question. Certainly incrementalism is one, right? The robot, and the second robot comes in and sees the trash can for the first time. It maps that one thing and flags it, semantically recognizes a trash can and puts a marker there and changes the map for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that's what Waymo does today, right? The first car through, when the cones go up in Waymo, it maps the cones and says, oh, this road has been pushed over to half a lane on the left, and you might have to go into onto the grass to get through. And then future Waymo cars will either decide to do that, or the algorithm will say, that's just too messy, and we're going to route people to some other street. And that continues to be true until a Waymo car sees that the cones are gone. And of course, Waymo and Google Maps and everybody tries to get feeds of data from the roadwork folks, so they always know that these are coming. But as many of you know, it's almost a random crapshoot as to whether what they say they're going to do is exactly what they do from an open-closed perspective. For a trash can, that robot could do it, but we also see that there are new sensors coming out, and somebody said, 365, 24/7 imagery is not possible, and I will sort of agree with that, but I think we're going to see much higher revisit rate from some of these satellites out here. And Planet's already out there firing with 3 to 5 meter pixels. I don't know, what do they claim, daily or 6 hours, something like that?
Sub-daily, sometimes 3 times. Yeah,
so they're doing very well. But there are higher resolution satellites coming. Black Sky and ISI are two examples that are up there, and there are better ones coming that are going to, I think, give us higher revisit at higher resolution. And so the last part of sort of our goal here, this idea of a large geospatial model, is can we train from the ground truth that we have a model that can take the low resolution data or the world coverage 3D data from a radar sensor or a black sky and synthesize an updated version of this intersection. Like, is there enough information in the pixel difference between the last shot that black sky took and this shot for a good, well-trained model to synthesize a accurate model of the world? And of course, hallucinations come in at this point, and there are no promises in life, but it's better than the alternative, which is waiting days, weeks, months, or years for the revisit from Street View. And that's in many cases where we are right now.
Actually, the project that I was talking about with my label cafe is the fact that we were trying to use Street View for labeling crops. And Street View might come this year and that come for the next 5 years. So we were trying to kind of work around that to accelerate this. But I want you to help sort of bring this down to the audience as to why this matters, maybe giving a practical example about something that we might not manage well in the near future, or we could manage better if we have this level of detail.
So I think
like a digital twin.
So obviously, the perfect world is a four-dimensional digital twin that keeps track of not just what the world is now, but theoretically every noticeable change within. And for all of you who've worked on this, you guys probably know more about this data problem than almost anyone, which is that there is not a good schema that allows you to describe a four-dimensional world. You have really good schema for your layer that you work with typically. You pull in other people's stuff for visualization. Maybe you get a query from Esri that gives you, here's the 5 data sets that have some stuff in this block. But there's not a way, even at Google, to describe four-dimensional data. What they do is they do four-dimensional observations. So they have satellite imagery from different times, and you can run your slider back and forth, and Street View same way. But they can't tell you that McDonald's used to be a Burger King 2 years ago. Because they don't have that data organized that way. That particular one would be kind of easy, but trying to solve that as a schema in a database across all possibilities is very hard. And when I was at Google, we spent a lot of time trying to describe just the schematics of buildings, businesses, building footprints, and property, parking lots, entry points, and exits. And that was a huge, huge headache to get right. And it changes. Human furniture in the world changes pretty frequently, and the closer you look, the more it changes.
Mm-hmm. I just remembered one of the panelists before once said something like she would like to know what is everywhere, what was there before, how has it changed, and what are the consequences of it. So sort of having like this 3D model. From my work, we talked about this before, where I'm thinking if we remove 250,000 trees from this ecosystem, what might unfold? But then if you model with this type of information, if you have a cyclone of the speed, how much damage, how quickly you can recover. So I really, really like, I'm excited about this type of stuff, especially it's great for learning. Another question that I was thinking about in terms of learning and capabilities, so this is sort of a little bit related to the previous panel, especially the fact that I'm going to use the word crowdsourced, so using Scanverse and people who worked in Pokemon Go. This is a question we didn't kind of discuss before, but how could that be really relevant and interesting for the teachers that we have in the room who are trying to find tools to get students engaged with geographic information system and research and tools that they already have access to?
That's an interesting question. I'm gonna sort of step back and just focus on crowdsource for a minute and see if I can come to a good answer to that question. I will go to sort of Google's model where we spend a lot of time trying to automate the creation, collection, and map data using Street View, satellite, and any other signal we could get. But as many of you know, Google's real superpower is you and your complaints about the map or corrections about the map. It turns out...
And reviews of restaurants.
And reviews of restaurants, which I actually value quite a bit. They get between 20 and 100 million corrections per day from humans now. So in the grand scheme of labeling, they have solved this problem to a level that Apple is doomed on, and Meta and Microsoft just have no idea how to get to. That labeled data is valuable for two reasons. One, it corrects the map in the moment, but it's also used as a signal for machine learning to figure out what's likely to change in the future, right? Because that is in many ways a four-dimensional edit, but they struggle with how to organize that. I think we're going to see much more of that in the future. And I think that Scaniverse is one example. There are going to be lots of tools for data collection out there. And I know Esri has like Field Map as one of their apps that you can send to Esri data collect out there and send people to update tree locations or whatever. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to have specific data sets collected, and things that are not part of the sort of, call it the boring mapping that we worry about, but is the rest of the world. And I think that these tools are going to be much easier to use. And I put it to you that how you organize that data is the hard part. Like the schema and the database is really important.
And for my teachers?
I think teachers, you want to pick a topic where they can have an influence on the world. So it's got to be in their environment. And so what are data sets that are poorly managed but in their environment? And some of them are dynamic, some of them are just poorly mapped. Simplistically, like the hiking trails, in Central Park are really well mapped. Although I just found a bug this morning. But the hiking trails in most neighborhoods are not. OpenStreetMaps, has more sometimes than Google does, but the truth usually lies somewhere either elsewhere or halfway between OSM and Google. And I think that figuring out problem spaces that are not complete and then sending the students out to collect that data and then being able to do something with it, because there's nothing more important than showing the impact of the data you collect.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I have no idea how we're doing on time, because this only shows the time.
3 minutes.
Awesome. So I wanted Brian to kind of share if there was one single most exciting thing on the horizon. What is it that you're thinking about, or you could be thinking about?
Well, I'm going to take the question, but I'm going to go back to what Dr. Maywan was talking about earlier, which is that the problem with large language models is they're all about words. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're about pixels, but they barely understand them. And these world models, like Fei-Fei Li is talking about, are really cool, but they are geotypical. NVIDIA Cosmos is geotypical and is really good at physics, although not perfect, but it's pretty good at physics, which is very important, but it's not geospecific. And so what Niantic is working on is actually geospecific world models, or what we call the large geospatial model, where map data matters. And the problem is it's not a one-to-one comparison. Like if you look at world models, large language models, they basically just dump terabytes of data, whether it's images or videos, into these models and let the models figure out a singular translation from stream to synthesis or creation or hallucination. With maps, it's much different. Maps are facts, and these models tend to struggle with facts. And so I think can we build a model that is good enough to synthesize mostly accurate facts from limited data? And I think we can, and I think that the advantage of geographers over, and I will argue one of the reasons there are fewer geographers now is because many of the geographers of days of old spent all their time fighting the data and just getting any data set at all. Right now it's the exact opposite. You have fire hoses of data and you have to pick which one. And I think we're going to see even more of that in the future. And can we build better and more complete data sets and maps from using AI? And it will be a process, and it will not just be asking the LLM to make it up for you. Can we build the tools? And so, you who have your data sets, right now that you have well-curated data sets that are great in this vertical from 20 years ago to today, and this geography here. Those are valuable. Can you find a way to teach a model how to do something with that data set? I think is the challenge that I put to you, which is not what you asked, but I felt I needed to say it.
I think it's really interesting, just reflecting on the fact that there's more dis and misinformation, which is kind of looping back into large language models. And so, if somebody's purely dependent on some GPT for facts, these facts are being constantly updated with mis and disinformation. It's a big challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And then when it comes to geographic data, then it's a much bigger challenge. I want to thank Brian. I think from what we've learned, what I've learned, what I know about the work that he's done, it's clear that what you've done is shaping a lot of what we end up using, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go. I already have all sorts of plans to work with Scanverse, and I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.